Hey, and welcome to Eat Out at Home, the podcast. This is the place for those who love cooking and creating connections through food. I'm your host, Chef Evelyn, and on this podcast, I share with you my favorite tips and tricks for enjoying life one bite at a time. If you're ready for today's episode, sit back, relax, grab a snack, and let's dive in. Hey, and welcome back to Eat Out at Home, the podcast. And today I kind of want to dive into some of the benefits of eating at home and cooking at home consistently. And I'm not going to start with your stereotypical, cooking at home saves you so much money and cooking at home is better for your overall health. Those are true, and I am going to address those and probably put my own little spin on it, my own little flavor, my own little spice on it to make it updated and maybe a little bit more impactful for you, as I had to do it for myself. But I kind of want to talk about some other things that for me actually were bigger motivators as far as benefits for cooking at home and eating at home consistently. And I want to start with one that I've been talking about a little bit in a couple of episodes that I've been recording recently. And that was that cooking at home for me, one of the benefits was self-expression, and that for me, cooking is an art form, so much so that I left my engineering career to go to culinary school and to become a chef. And as much as I knew how cooking at home was beneficial to me financially and beneficial to my physical health, that during that 7-year stretch was when I wasn't cooking at home, those things actually were not enough to motivate me to make a lifestyle change to cook at home more consistently. When I started to realize that I was feeling boxed in, and when I was also looking to expand my hobbies, I realized that growing up cooking was my hobby. It was my form of self-expression. It was my form of creativity, that when I got bored, I would bake or I would cook. When I wanted to try something new, I would bake or I would cook, and come up with different things. And I would watch cooking shows and I would read cookbooks and I would talk to my grandmother about recipes and food. And I don't have the very, heartwarming story of my grandmother taught me how to cook. I don't have that story. My grandmother was a fantastic cook. I mean, a fantastic cook. Probably one of the best cooks I ever knew. She was not, however, a great baker. May she rest in peace. She was not a great baker, which is kind of what got me into baking. But we used to sit and watch cooking shows together. And she had a huge cookbook collection, and she had lots of newspaper and magazine clippings. And so we would talk about that. But she never really brought me in the kitchen to learn how to cook. But I definitely think that my love for cooking and my love for food came from her, even if not directly. And so I realized, I was like, this is, some people they like to write poetry. Some people like to write music. Some people like to write novels. Some people like to create sculptures or pottery or, different things like that. We all have our different creative outlets, right? Some people's creative outlet is business or dance or hair or home decor or fashion or whatever the case may be. That is their form of self-expression. And I realized that cooking and entertaining was mine. And so when I realized that was what was missing for me, then cooking at home shot up on the list for me. And then kind of subsequently, as another benefit that I considered when it came to cooking at home, was something to exercise my creative muscle. As someone who, has 2 engineering degrees, I spend a lot of time in my left brain. Formulas, numbers, chemistry, calculus, physics, heat transfer, thermodynamics, all of the things, working in a corporate job, that was manufacturing, just very kind of analytical. I didn't have a place to be more right brain and to be more creative, right? And even when I got into business consulting, it was very much strategies and data and interpreting the data and then mapping out a plan to move forward. And again, a super important skill, but very, very left brain. And I found myself lacking in a more fluid, flowy kind of creative space. I really didn't have that. And I remember getting back into makeup first and remembering how good it felt. And it felt like play to me. And so cooking also feels like play to me. It's just play that I had to do every day, and I wanted to move it to I got to do it, not versus I had to do it. And so for me, having that creative outlet, like one part was about being fully expressed. Like part of my identity is that I'm someone that cooks. So that was part of the self-expression, but also having a creative outlet, like trying new flavors, trying new techniques, digging back into books and shows and chefs and different things like that. I really, really missed that. And then I would say the next thing was that it really felt like a form of self-care. There's actually a word, and it escapes my mind at this moment. I've actually tried to look it up and I can't even remember what it was, but there's actually a word for the benefit that happens to our brains from doing something with our hands, right? Which is why you find people who do woodworking or gardening or sculpting or pottery or hair or building or Legos or whatever the case may be. There is some intrinsic value. There is some chemical reaction that happens when we create with our hands. And I was missing that. I didn't have everything that I was doing in my life was all brain activity. And listen, I love being able to make a living from the thoughts in my head, but I was missing that very tactile experience, and realizing that cooking for myself and nurturing myself in that way was actually a form of self-care, right? So now we've got self-expression, we've got creativity, we've got self-care. And I will say that the other thing that was more motivating to me than even like, oh, saving money or eating healthy was that's where community came from. Like, connection from the time we're little starts in the kitchen, at the dinner table, or somebody's in the kitchen, or we're going in there, grab a snack. And I realized, like, we talk about in America right now, like there's this loneliness epidemic, and we talk a lot about how there's not a lot of third spaces. And it's like, well, your kitchen can be somebody's third space, right? Your someone else's dining table can be your third space where you come together and commune. And I remember that I used to entertain a lot and have people over. It could be for a random dinner. It could be for a special event. It could be for, the Super Bowl. It could be for whatever, for the holidays. But I remember that I was like, cooking was always central to creating community, to creating meaningful connections, to deepening relationships. And that is cross-cultural. That is across continents, that coming together and communing over a meal is probably one of the most ancient historic forms of building and nurturing relationships. And that in this age of that, cooking has to be convenient and it has to be quick. We really have lost the connectivity that cooking can bring. Of like, just have somebody over on Tuesday for dinner. You don't have to set the table. You don't have to do it. It literally could be your regular spaghetti and a side salad and some garlic bread. But it's like, okay, they would probably be thankful that they don't have to cook that night. They probably don't care what you're offering. And you guys get community. And I realized that I missed that so much. I remember thinking about back when I was in college, and obviously life in adulthood is very different than life in college. But one of the aspects that I really missed about college was this very organic going over to someone's house or someone's apartment and enjoying a meal. Like it was never anything super fancy. It was never anything planned. It was just like, hey, we got some stuff on the grill. Y'all want to come through? Or, hey, we're studying. We've got food. You want to come over? Right. It was very organic. It was very low fuss. It was very normal in that environment. And I remember thinking, I want to bring elements of that into this season of my life if at all possible. It might not be the exact same. It definitely won't be on the same frequency, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And if I have to wait until there's a special occasion or a holiday, or until I can do this big 5-course meal with a specialty drink, if it's got to be Instagram worthy, if it's got to be all of these things, then yeah, it's not going to happen. If it's got to be expensive, if it's got to be labor intensive, if it's got to be more than what I'm usually doing, yeah, then that is going to create obstacles to the connection. But when I realized, I was like, but this is the benefit of cooking at home, right? That self-expression, that creativity, that self-care, that community, right? I was like, oh, this is costing me, not cooking at home is actually costing me more than just extra money and possibly potential not as great food choices for my health, right? And I even think about like around the holidays and things like that, when we're like, family, we're losing recipes, and, the elders are transitioning and we're losing recipes. And it's like, well, also because they didn't necessarily wait until there was major holidays. There were Sunday dinners. There were, just an average weeknight meal. I remember growing up and being at one of my mom's friend's house on a random Thursday night, and them just being like, hey, y'all want to stay for dinner? Like it just wasn't a thing. And listen, I understand that life is different. I understand that our time is different. And I talk about that in another episode. But for me, I realized that the benefits of cooking at home significantly outweigh any inconvenience. And yes, is cooking at home better on the wallet and the finances? 100%. I mean, you can find so many stats and studies about how, the average cost of eating out per person is anywhere between $8 to $15, but cooking at home is anywhere between like $3 to $6 per serving per meal, right? So, I'm pretty sure that I don't have to beat you over the head with the statistics about, yes, it is more financially viable to cook at home than it is to eat out. Even if you're cooking for one, I've seen that on social media, like, oh, it's not cheaper to cook at home if you're a single person. It is if you are doing it right. Okay. If you're buying pre-made food and pre-packaged food and processed food, yeah, it's probably going to be about the same. But if you're buying ingredients and then you're actually cooking at home, it is significantly cheaper. And even from a health perspective, like obviously, we know that, if you're someone like me, I prefer organic foods, right? If you don't, listen, there's no judgment there. I prefer organic foods. I prefer all natural. I prefer foods that are not highly processed, right? I prefer foods, if I can get them locally sourced, all of that kind of thing. And so, yes, on one hand, there is the caloric difference between, okay, what are all they cooking with when you go out to eat, right? And what kind of fats are they using? And they're just adding extra things. There's the salt element, there's the sugar element, but then there's also like the toxicity level, which is, kind of like, is it organic? Is it all natural? Are these things fed hormones? All these kind of things. And it's like, while it may seem like it's not that bad, but that could also cost me in doctor's visits. It could cost me in time off work. It could cost me in quality of life. It could cost me in hospital bills. It could cost me in diagnosis. It could cost me it like the argument about cooking at home being healthier and being more, financially beneficial are valid. And even with all of that, it was not enough to motivate me. And it's still not enough to motivate some people. But when I really thought about relationships and connection, when I really thought about cooking as a form of self-care to help regulate my nervous system and to help my mind focus, because when you're cooking or when you're baking, you really have to focus on the task at hand, and it helps to slow the mind down and to create something from nothing. When I thought about it as a form of creativity and how I can pull from different colors and flavors and cuisines and regions and things like that, when I thought about it as a form of self-expression, then I was like, oh, when I look at this in totality, I see the significance and the overarching value that is humongous to me for cooking at home, but that's because I value all of those things, right? And so maybe you're in a place where you're like, yeah, I know it's better for me. I know it's better to save money. Yeah. It's still not motivating me. There may be some other things there, right, that would motivate you to cook at home more consistently. So I just wanted to really get into like, here's the real benefits of cooking at home, that is way more than just, save money and eat healthier. So let me know in the comments. Let me know what are the benefits of eating at home and cooking at home consistently to you. What do you find valuable? Is it something that I mentioned? Have you thought about these things? Are there other elements of cooking at home that you find valuable? I mean, this is also about like creating family traditions and memories and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of group that under relationships and connectivity. But let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. You can also tag me on Instagram at Chef Evelyn, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you're ready to start cooking at home consistently, make sure you join the Eat Out at Home Challenge. Visit chefevelyn.com/challenge for all of the details. If you're curious about what I'm cooking in between episodes, make sure to give me a follow on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for some delicious behind the scenes. And if you enjoyed this episode, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify to leave us a review. Remember, eating out at home allows you to cook better, eat healthier, save money, and create community. And most importantly, cooking at home is the ultimate form of self-care. I'll see you in the next episode.